Welcome to the Community Hospice Compliance and Ethics Program Training. The objectives for this training are to define compliance, appreciate laws and regulations, distinguish between error, fraud, waste, and abuse, and identify 3 ways fraud, waste, and abuse can be reported to the Compliance Department. The Community Hospice Board of Directors has approved and adopted the Compliance and Ethics Program for the organization. Our Compliance and Ethics Program was first created and adopted in 2012. The focus of our program is on ethics, integrity in the workplace, and compliance with federal and state laws related to fraud, false claims, thefts, kickbacks, or other violations. What is compliance? Compliance is a working environment that encourages ethical and proper ways to do business, encourages commitment, encourages violations of law to be reported, creates processes with monitoring, creates processes which prevent, detect, or deter non-compliant behavior. What are the benefits of the organization having a compliance and ethics program? A compliance and ethics program increases the awareness of compliance issues among board members, volunteers, employees, officers, directors, and contracted patient service providers, prevents and detects violations, reduces potential liability, enhances positive reputation by exercising due diligence. As an employee, you should be familiar with Community Hospice's Code of Ethics. Our Code of Ethics has been in place since 2012 when it was approved and adopted by our Board of Directors. Employees sometimes wonder, what is the Code of Ethics and what does it really mean? The Code of Ethics documents in writing the organization's promise to uphold its most important values, dealing with such matters as patient care, business decision-making, and our relationship with the community. Simply stated, the Code of Ethics says to our colleagues and the public that we truly care about the way we conduct ourselves as individuals and therefore as an organization. The Code of Ethics ultimately provides the ethical framework for patient care and business decision-making. Over the next few slides, we will review the Community Hospice Code of Ethics. I will, during my professional relationship with Community Hospice, provide the highest quality care in accordance with all applicable laws, regulations, and accepted standard of practice. Ascertain and honor the specific end-of-life choices and values of each patient and family. Appreciate and be sensitive to the ethnic, cultural, religious, spiritual, and lifestyle diversity of patients and families. Provide hospice and palliative care to all who qualify, regardless of race, religion, sexual orientation or preference, ethnicity, or ability to pay. Protect patients' property, right to privacy, confidentiality, health information, and safety. Not solicit, accept, offer, or give any gifts, gratuities, services, or remuneration in exchange for or related to patient care, patient referrals, and accept only lawful compensation for the performance of my duty. Comply with all federal and state laws to prevent, detect, report, and eliminate any hospice program error, waste, abuse, and fraud. Not self-deal, betray the trust, or breach my duties of loyalty, care, and candor to Community Hospice, its patients and families. And report promptly any known or suspected violations of this Code of Ethics, laws, regulations, or Community Hospice's policies and procedures to my supervisor or directly to the Compliance Department, 904-407-6777, or anonymously to Community Hospice's Compliance and Ethics Alert Line, toll-free 285-6056. Now let's look at a short scenario. Mary Lynn, hospice aide, is assigned to provide personal care for Mr. Smith. She has visited his home 3 times a week to provide personal care to him over the course of the last 5 months. One day, he slips her a $20 bill and says, "You take such good care of me. Go do something nice for yourself." If Mary Lynn accepts the $20, would this be a violation of our code of ethics? Yes, this would be a violation of our code of ethics, because our code of ethics requires us not to accept gifts or gratuities for or related to patient care. The best way to handle this type of situation is to simply say to the patient or family, "Thank you, but community hospice does not allow me to accept tips for the care that I provide." If the patient and/or family is insistent that you accept a tip, you can tell them that a donation to the Community Hospice Foundation can be made in your honor if they would like. We will now move on to healthcare law. Federal and state governments have enacted healthcare fraud and abuse laws to ensure taxpayer money allocated for government-funded healthcare is not misused, wasted, or stolen. There are many federal and state laws that address fraud and abuse. Thus, we'll only have time to address some of the laws during this. Laws that we will be addressing include federal statutes, the False Claims Act, the Anti-Kickback Statute. Please also note that state statutes exist that are very similar. Florida False Claims Act and Kickbacks Prohibited Statute. A false claim is a claim for payment for services or supplies that were not provided specifically as presented or for which the provider is otherwise not entitled to payment. The false claim statute is the law most often used to bring a case against a healthcare provider for the submission of false claims. The False Claims Act prohibits knowingly presenting or causing to be presented a false or fraudulent claim for payment or approval. Let's look at some examples. A false claim is a claim indicating a higher level of service than was actually provided, for service the provider knows is not reasonable and necessary, for clinical services provided by an individual who does not meet the minimum education, experience, or licensure to provide the service, for a service or supply that was never provided, indicating the service was provided for a diagnosis other than the true diagnosis code in order to obtain reimbursement for the service. When the government investigates allegations under the False Claims Act and determines there is a violation, penalties are then levied for the unlawful conduct. The penalty for violating the False Claims Act is up to 3 times the amount of each false claim, and fines of $11,181 to $22,363 for each false claim. Federal criminal prosecutions for filing false claims may result in imprisonment for 5 years and a fine of $10,000 per claim. The Anti-Kickback Statute states it is a crime to knowingly and willfully solicit, receive, offer, or pay remuneration of any kind, money, goods, or services for a referral of an individual to another for the purpose of supplying services that are covered by a federal health care program, or purchasing, leasing, ordering, or arranging for any good, facility, service, or item that is covered by a federal health care program. Examples of kickbacks include money, the payment of a monetary fee in exchange for referrals, waiver of copays for patients for the purpose of increasing billable services. Gifts, giving an all-expense paid vacation in exchange for referrals. Giving discounts, credits, or commissions in exchange for referrals. These are all examples of kickbacks under the anti-kickback statute. When the government investigates and finds a healthcare provider guilty under the anti-kickback statutes, penalties are then levied for the unlawful conduct. The penalty for unlawful conduct under the anti-kickback statute may include a fine of up to $25,000, imprisonment of up to 5 years, or both. In addition, the provider can be excluded from participation in the federal health care programs. What is fraud and abuse under the law? We will start first by taking a look at error and waste. An error is a simple mistake. It is unintentional. Examples of an error would include documenting on the wrong date and or time, or maybe just a simple data entry error. Waste. Waste is an inefficiency. It's misuse of resources. Examples would include repeated errors requiring correction, personal use of supplies, ordering excessive supplies for patients. Abuse, under the law, is a bending of the rules for one's own benefit or the benefit of the organization. Examples would include billing physician services at a higher level of service than was actually provided, waiving insurance deductibles for patients who have the financial means to pay. Fraud is intentional deception for one's own benefit or for the benefit of the organization. For example, continuing to care for patients who do not have a life expectancy of 6 months or less as required under the Medicare regulations for patients to receive hospice services, or billing for services that were not performed. Now let's take a look at our second scenario. Mr. Adams has a referral diagnosis of lung cancer. However, medical records have not been received. Lily Ann, RN, is evaluating Mr. Adams for admission to the hospice program. Mr. Adams tells Lily Ann, "My doctor said my cancer's cured." Lily Ann reviews Mr. Adams' case with the hospice medical director for admission, but fails to report the patient has been told his cancer is cured and that medical records have not been received. The medical director approves the admission based on Lily Ann's report. Would this be a violation of health care law? Yes, this would be a violation of health care law. The patient does not meet criteria for admission to the hospice program. Therefore, hospice services for this patient would not be considered reasonable and necessary. Once an error of this type is discovered, the patient should be discharged and any payments received from Medicare, Medicaid, or other payer source should be refunded. In November 2015, Hospice of Citrus County in Beverly Hills, Florida, settled with the government for $3 million for submitting claims for patients that were not terminally ill. In November of 2013, Hospice of the Comforter in Orlando, Florida, settled with the government for $3 million for submitting claims for patients that were not terminally ill. In July 2013, Hernando Pasco Hospice in Hudson, Florida, settled with the government for $1 million for submitting claims for patients that were not terminally ill. In all three of these cases, the patients did not meet the hospice criteria of having a life expectancy of 6 months or less. In July 2012, Altus Healthcare and Hospice in Atlanta, Georgia settled with the government for just over $500,000 for submitting claims for patients that did not meet inpatient criteria for hospice services. Now that we've learned about healthcare law, abuse, and fraud, we'll now learn how to report violations or suspected violations of the law within our organization. Together, we can effectively prevent, detect, report, and eliminate errors, waste, abuse, and fraud by reporting any reasonably suspected or observed violations of the Community Hospice Code of Ethics or applicable law. It is the policy of Community Hospice to review and investigate all allegations or reports of fraud and/or abuse, to take corrective actions for any supported allegations after a thorough investigation, and to report confirmed misconduct to the appropriate parties or agencies, to keep all reported information confidential and only share with those individuals who need to know in order to conduct an investigation to correct the situation or as required by law. There are two methods for reporting suspected or observed violations of our Code of Ethics or applicable law within the organization. One is direct reporting, the other is anonymous reporting. Direct reporting, when you use this method of reporting, the individual you are reporting to knows your identity and will be asked to disclose your identity to our internal compliance investigators. There are several ways to use the direct reporting method. 1. You can report to any supervisor, manager, department director, officer of the organization. Report to the internal compliance line at 407-6777. Or you may report to Lisa Miller, our risk manager, at 407-5030, or by email. Or you may report to Kenny Stevenson, our VP of Compliance and Quality, who also serves as our Corporate Compliance Officer, at 407-5033, or by email. You may also choose to conceal your identity by utilizing the anonymous reporting method. If you wish to report a concern or suspected violation anonymously, you may contact the Community Hospice Alert Line. The Alert Line is operated by a private company. This private company has staff who are trained to obtain complete and accurate information in a confidential manner. No effort is made to identify the person reporting. Information received is forwarded to the Compliance Department for investigation and appropriate action. This line is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The Alert Line toll-free number is 855-285-6056. Please also note that there is an online reporting option that is operated by the same private company. The address is communityhospice.alertline.com. Some individuals may be concerned about retaliation. Community Hospice prohibits retaliation of any kind if you report in good faith a compliance concern or potential violation or violation to any supervisor, manager, department director, officer of the organization, compliance department, the Alert Line, or appropriate office or agency outside of the organization. If you feel that you have been subject to retaliation, you should contact the compliance department immediately. You report to Lisa Miller, 407-5030, or by email, or to Kenny Stevenson, our VP of Compliance and Quality, 407-5030. Now that you've learned about our Compliance and Ethics program, let's look at what your responsibilities are under our Community Hospice Compliance and Ethics program. Be certain that you have read the Compliance and Ethics program document. Ask questions about anything that you are unsure of. Perform your work with integrity and within the law. Maintain awareness in order to detect violations and properly report them. Never retaliate against another staff member for reporting a compliance concern in good faith. Thank you for your time and attention. Should you have any questions related to this presentation, please contact Lisa Miller at 407-5030 or Kenny Stevenson at 407-5033. Please remember to receive credit for taking this training. You must complete both the post-test and the evaluation.